first episode of the Witching Hour podcast, where we debate all things history, witches, Newcastle, women, just everything in the local area. I'm Holly.
I'm Abby.
And today we are joined by 3 children from the North East Futures UTC School of GCSE age. So we are joined by their code names, the Wicked Witch of the West, Wicked Witch of the East, and Wicked Witch of the South. Say hello, everyone.
Hi, I'm West.
Hi, I'm East.
Hi, I'm South.
Perfect. It's lovely to be with you today. So today, our topics are popular culture mainly. So we're going to look at the stereotypes that are involved with witches in kind of today's society and kind of modern settings, and things that have come from the early modern period but now are very much still in place. So I'll hand over to Abby.
Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to get you guys to look at some images, which for our listeners is available on our blog and in all of our source areas. I'm going to show you these images, and I'm just going to get you to tell me basically what's similar between all of them and what stands out as a witch stereotype. So if I pass these over to you guys.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
I'll pass these over to you guys and you have a little look for me and tell me what's in common with them also, what stands out to you.
Just say what you say. It's like catchphrase.
The what on the nose?
Yeah.
Or on the chin?
Yep.
Or like green or a different colour?
Yep, so like tinged skin.
We've all got like black, dark hair.
Uh-huh.
We've all got cape.
Yeah, so the cloak and the cape, we haven't commented on that yet. So like the clothing is very mysterious and
the
covered.
eye colours are very bright.
Yeah.
Wrinkles. The noses are long.
The long noses, yeah. So that's one that quite often we don't talk about as much, but it's actually, as probably mentioned in, I think it was our other episodes, 2 or 3, one of the 2, it was very clearly linked to anti-Semitism. So the idea of the hooked nose linking to the idea of the people of the Jewish faith and their physical traits was something that was used, again, very anti-Semitically, and that's still, weirdly enough, carried in a lot of popular media to this day, because it hasn't really died out in terms of the image of the witch, but it's got some very problematic links in there.
So once again, it's marginalisation and persecution.
Yeah.
Of a minority group, we should also mention. Although kind of the Jewish population is a large group, I would argue the Christianity is...
Comparatively at the moment,
Yeah.
they would be classed still as a minority group in most perceptions of modern day. Is there anything that any of them are doing that stands out to you guys?
Smiling.
Okay, we've got the grin. What actions have we got going on? It's like these things.
Making like potions.
So potions, which links to like your herbalists and your apothecary, which is what Holly mentioned in one of our later episodes, which you'll see later on for our listeners, but it's about when you're looking at them being healers or well makers and mothers in society, those that were making their own homebrew medicine were actually quite demonised for doing so quite a lot. Anything else that stands out to you guys?
Not very like conventionally attractive.
Yeah, so there's a lot of perceived ugliness. So because they are women that were not, should we say, in this time and age, if we're looking at the 1600s, men weren't a fan of. So they were trying to make them look ugly and societally repulsive so that people didn't like them. So that witches were then further demonised. Because if a witch was pretty, some people might let her off. But you got to make them look ugly in stereotypes to really put that image forward. Okay, so we've got the green skin, we've got the warts, we've got the cloaks and the messy hair and the unattractiveness. And I think there's one other thing that we can probably look at, which I think this witch is doing, but it's not super clear. She's on a broom. So yeah, you've got that idea of flying and doing something that's very much against God and against normality, so something that very much goes against the rules. But it's a very popular thing. I mean, you think of witches and the broomsticks and their cats, which is all very common thoughts. So I think that's everything we can take from those images. Very, very nice, easy stereotypes to see on there.
So we shall move on then to arguably my favourite part of our podcast, which is where we dissect and disseminate information from popular culture sources such as film and TV shows. So the first thing that we're going to look at is Hocus Pocus. For our listeners, if you look on our blog, you will find the links to these sources, so feel free to sort of play along and analyse with us. But for now, we're going to take a short pause and watch it. So we'll be back with you shortly. Okay, so let's look at Hocus Pocus. So it is set in the 90s. However, the witches are believed to be from 1693 with the Salem witch trials. So speaking of Salem, it was arguably the biggest / the only kind of real witch
Scandal.
Yeah.
The most infamous event, shall we call it.
despite only 19 being tried and prosecuted.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what did you guys get from it?
They were very stereotypical.
Mm-hmm.
They looked how you'd think a witch would look.
Did they look like the images that we shown you, do you think?
Not quite. They looked like normal people, but just the features were exaggerated.
Mm-hmm. Did they have any of those warts or the cloaks or anything that you noticed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else did you notice they were doing? Was there any actions that they were doing that were also in the pictures?
They were riding a broom.
Exactly, yeah.
Or a vacuum cleaner at one point. But
Yes.
a broom. A broom in theory.
They were using magic at some point is what we're getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think kind of the early modern idea of the witch would have included this? Or do you think this is more of a cinematic thing?
Mixture.
Mixture.
Because the ideas would have come from earlier on, but then as a modern
Yeah.
thing, they've been produced to be more of a...
So it's a bit of a watered down truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. A bit of a Chinese whispers in the history aspect.
Imagine just casually in the early modern period.
So it's been passed on a broom.
There's the neighbour.
Oh dear.
But yeah, no. So we'll now move on to kind of an even moderner text because Hocus Pocus was made in 1993. And we'll move on to Harry Potter. So once again, we will take a short pause for our listeners to watch the clip. And we'll be back soon. Okay, so we're now back. We're looking at Harry Potter. In particular, the clip was the Deathly Hallows Part 2 trailer. So what kind of things did we get from that then? Was it kind of your traditional witch stereotype, or was it something a bit more modern?
Something a bit more modern. Because there was a good witch or wizard, and there was a bad wizard and witch.
That is quite notable, this idea of a wizard.
Yeah.
Do you think that's more of a manly term? Do you think wizards are more likely to be men?
Yeah.
I suppose that could take from very early myths and legends. For example, Arthur and the idea of Merlin as the wizard.
Definitely. We'll touch upon that a little bit more in our gender episode as well, our episode 2. So you guys will hear a little bit more about whether women and men were depicted differently basically during the witch trials in our following episode. In terms of Harry Potter as well, you've obviously, like you said, you've got your light versus dark, so you've got your good versus bad. Do you think that ties into anything else that witches were accused for? So religion and the devil or things like that? What do you guys think of when you think of light versus dark?
Mainly good and evil.
Mm-hmm. So the idea of the light is what you think about when you think about light? Do you think about white? What makes you think of that?
It's in Harry Potter, using your power for good, not for evil.
Okay. Yourself? Anything?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So the morally right versus the morally wrong, essentially.
Yeah.
But I suppose at the time, in the early modern period, a witch thought she was doing morally good.
Thought she was morally on the right grounds.
Yeah, so I suppose it's quite similar in that respect then.
Mm.
But moving on to an even moderner text, we have American Horror Story Coven. So we will now give you some time to watch the trailer, and when you're back, we shall discuss it. Okay, so arguably a very, very different kind of setting. So we have, it's set in America to start off with, although not in Salem.
No, New Orleans we're looking at for this area.
It does have kind of some resignation with that. So what did we think of that one? Did we think it was kind of, it's obviously evidently more modernistic, but did you feel that any of the stereotypes were there or not?
No.
No?
Because they didn't look traditionally witch-like, but they were still doing things that would have been perceived as being a witch, or, yeah.
We noticed anything about like their clothes or the way they kind of carried themselves?
They were wearing black a lot.
Yeah, so a lot of dark colours. So while we've updated how they're looking, we're still staying true to that idea of dark clothing and very mysterious and very dark connotated. So looking at that, so it still does line up.
I believe burnings were still involved as well.
Witch
So
burnings.
we still got that kind of punishment coming through, that element there. As well, I believe within the trailer they argue that they must fight or burn, so they're still a minority group. What about, did you get elements of kind of, so we know that it's assumed that witches are in contact with the devil, and it's because of this idea of sex and temptation. Do you think that kind of idea of temptation came through?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it was quite, do you think American Horror Story shows quite a explicit version?
Yeah.
Yeah. What makes you think that?
It was just a lot more, not extreme, I don't know how to say it, but...
A lot more graphic. A lot more out there. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, like, I felt like they were in a constant state of fight or flight mode, kind of the idea. And then we also, once again, had this idea of different magics opposing each other.
Yeah, so especially with the area being New Orleans, I mean, a lot of people out there that if they're interested in witches will know about the existence of different kinds of magic and the idea of voodoo in New Orleans. So it was very, very popular because of the cultural past of America at that time, especially in those areas. And basically reflecting on that, there was the idea of contrasting magic, and there was conflict between these different groups. Very interesting to also split the groups up in that way.
Yeah, so very interesting.
Almost a little bit of racial discrimination between magics, which is a very interesting perspective to take, but it's not clarified within the trailer. It's much more within the actual season itself.
I suppose it takes white versus black magic for like its literal sense.
Yeah, a very literal sense.
But yeah, I feel like that's definitely been a good discussion for our first ever episode.
Yeah.
Very modernist. However, in our next few episodes we will be discussing gender, literature and class, all from the early modern period, so please stay tuned for that. However, this is goodbye from us, and we hope to see you / hear you about listening in our episodes. So bye everyone, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.